All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of our Aquarium's Online Academy. My name is Talia. I'm from our education department, and I'm excited to spend a little bit of my morning with you talking about actually one of my favorite types of animals. So that, oh my goodness, we're doing some cleaning in our jellies exhibit. If you're wondering what that brush is just now, they're doing scrub. It looks like on the floor. So, title of the program is No Bones, No Problem. So we are going to be talking about animals with no bones or invertebrates, if you want to be very, very fancy about it. So we're going to be exploring a little bit of it. Even though these animals don't have any bones, they still have some really cool adaptations to help them out in their homes. So, my friends, if you are curious about anything during our program, if you're wondering about something, if you have some questions, please feel free to let us know. There are two ways to do that depending on when you are watching this program. If you're watching this live on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, you can text those questions in, and that number is down below on your screen, 562-286-1838. If you're watching this live as we're broadcasting on Wednesday morning. If you're watching this a little bit later, or if you're like, I wished I asked that question earlier in the morning, you can still ask those questions. We just ask, that you email us instead, and that email address is down below, live@lbaop.org. So that's two ways to interact with us depending on when you're watching. So again, if you're watching it live, please feel free to text in those questions. I'll be happy to try to give them a shot and answer them. So let's try to talk a little bit before we get into some of the cool invertebrates that call the ocean their home. Let's figure out a little bit about what is an invertebrate. What does that word mean? So basically, an invertebrate is a very fancy way to say that this animal has no bones, and one very particular bone in particular, and that is the vertebrate. So if you give yourself kind of a backwards hug, you feel this big long bone in the center of your back. That is your vertebrae, your vertebrate, and they have all these little individual bones stacked up on top of each other, or your spine. So these animals don't have that big bone in their back. So that's why we call them invertebrates. In is kind of a fancy way to say no. So no vertebrates, no bones, especially that big bone in these animals that we're going to be talking about this morning. So can you imagine if we had no bones? What what would we look like? What would we do? Would we just be like blobs of jelly on the floor? I think we might be blobs of jelly. So we'd have to probably figure out, how are we gonna move? Are we gonna roll? Do we have to roll everywhere now? We're gonna have to like roll across the floor. I'm gonna have to like roll up to my door to try to open it. I'll probably have to like squiggle to try to open the door. I have to figure out new ways to kind of interact with my environment. If all of a sudden I had no bones, I'd have to figure out, how am I gonna move? How am I gonna eat? How am I gonna get from point A to point B? So these animals that we're going to be talking about today have some different adaptations, some things that are special, that are in them or on them, that helps them out in their home. So the first animal I wanted to talk about today is actually my friends that are behind me. I wanted to talk about some sea jellies today. So I'm going to get out of the way so you can see some more jellies. And I'm just going to take a moment to sort of wake up our scientists' brains and kind of make some observations, kind of learn a little bit just by looking at them. What do we see? What do we notice? And again, if you have questions or if you're curious about something, you're welcome to text those questions or observations in. So I notice, my friends, they're moving in a very particular way. Kind of moving a certain part of their body to mostly get that sort of push in the water. Ooh, that's a good example. Right there, right in front of the camera. Cool. Also notice there are some long, stringy things going on with this jelly as well. Very interesting. Also very nicely coming in front of the camera. My jellies are playing nice today. Oh my goodness, that was very close. Sometimes I feel our animals know where our cameras are. Come to say hello. Oh my goodness. Alright, so did we see what part of the jelly was moving. Kind of notice it's kind of this top part up here, and we call that the bell. Kind of think like you're ringing a bell, ding, 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 ding. That's kind of what they're using to move in the water. They're kind of pulsing it like that. And that's how they move through the water. Now, they're not the best of swimmers. They do have to go. Excuse me, my mic is being funny. They do kind of have to go with the flow. They go where the water takes them. They are considered a plankton, even though they're pretty big. Normally, times when we think about plankton, we think of something teeny, teeny, tiny. But yeah, these guys have to go with the flow. So if the water's going this way, they have to go that way too. Same thing if the water's going that way, they have to go that way too. So they're using their bell to move. They have muscles in there to kind of pulse through the water, and they also have all these long stringy bits, and that actually helps them get their food. I'm wondering if we can switch to just a kind of a picture of a jelly, just so we can focus on these stringy bits a little bit more, because I noticed, let's see, I'm gonna step a little bit this way so you can see that picture a little bit better, because I noticed, and I hope that you noticed too, that they're not all the same, right? There's some of these that are long and thin, and they kind of look like almost like little strands of spaghetti here. And then there's these other ones in the middle that are kind of frilly and fluffy. And that kind of helps them do different things. So these long, thin ones, these are their tentacles, and that's where their stinging cells are. So how they get their food is they actually sting them. They have little kind of points that kind of shoot out and make that prey very still. And that will help them kind of stop their food. And then these long frilly bits, these are called their oral arms, because they're arms that lead up to their mouth. And those are kind of nice and strong. They'll help them grab their food and bring them up to the middle where their mouth is. So jellies have stinging cells. They're called nematocysts, if you want to be very fancy about it this morning. And that helps them catch their food. Now, another cool thing about jellies are their stomachs. So especially you can see them a little bit easier in our moon jellies, is actually have a couple different parts to their stomach. So I'll give Miss Morgan just a moment. Morgan's helping me out in the studio, and my friend Miss Sarah as well, to put up some images of a moon jelly so we can look a little bit more at their stomachs. But yeah, I love, these are called West Coast nettles, by the way. And I love their beautiful kind of orange color. Ooh, great. So they have 4 parts to their tummies for our moon jelly here. You can kind of see these little half circles here. They have 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, we have some good questions coming in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Parts to their stomach. So our moon jellies have 4 little sections to their tummy, so they can eat a whole bunch of yummy food. Could you imagine if we had 4 tummies? What would you use your 4 tummies for? I think I'd have one for breakfast, so I could eat lots of bacon and eggs and French toast. I'd have one for lunch for sandwiches. I'd have one for dinner. Ooh, I'm in a lot of jellies right now. I closed my eyes as I was thinking, and I was like, oh, I am somewhere different. I can see their tummies here too. And then I think I'd say my 4th tummy just for dessert, so I could eat all the ice cream sundaes I wanted. And I think you can see a little bit in this one too. If you ever notice our jellies, ooh, that one over there was like pink. You can actually kind of see their tummies. So if they eat a lot of shrimp, they have like hot pink tummies, which is really, really funny. I have some questions coming in from some of my friends that are watching. One of them asked, where do jellies come from? Ooh, that is a very interesting question. So, historically, like, I'm not quite sure what the starting point of jellies are, if we're talking about like where they came from, like in the dinosaur age or something like that. But there was a lot of sort of jelly-like gelatinous friends in the dinosaur age, and kind of the jellies we have now probably came from those. But if you're asking more like, do they come from an egg or anything like that, they do come from an egg. So jellies, there are boy and girl jellies. Everything kind of goes into the water and forms a little egg. and then the egg will float around in the ocean and will actually um, settle down and stick to something. They actually kind of look upside down. They kind of look more like an anemone, and then they kind of grow from that and pop off to become a little jelly. So yeah, that's a little bit about where jellies come from. Ooh, okay. Somebody's asking what colors are they? They can come in so many different colors. So these are kind of a little bit like milky white, and they're kind of a little clear. Some of them are clear. They have like no color in them, so they're really good at hiding. Ooh, ooh, ooh. This is a flower hat jelly. This friend, if you shine a special light on them, they glow in the dark. So they have these little green proteins in them that will that will glow, excuse me, glow green if you shine a special light on them. So there's jellies that look like this. Our West Coast nettles are a little bit yellowy orange. There are some jellies with stripes. There's purple striped jellies. There are some jellies with polka dots. There's lagoon jellies with white little dots on them that kind of look like little mushrooms floating around, and those come in kind of a beige and a blue. I'm trying to think of more colors of jellies. There are lots of different colors of jellies, so yeah, they can come. I don't know if I've ever seen a rainbow jelly before, um, but yeah, there's lots of different. Ooh, these are the lagoon jellies. So they have little polka dots on them. This is kind of the kind of white, the beigey color. They also come in a really pretty blue sometimes too. So yeah, they come in all sorts of different colors. Somebody's asking, what are their prey? What are things that they like to eat? Depends on the jelly. So some of them will eat little tiny plankton that's smaller than them. So a lot of times they'll eat little brine shrimp or krill that might be floating in the water. So little shrimp that's maybe about yay big, maybe about the size of your fingernail. That might be a better measurement there, or at least the grown up shrimp. Sometimes they might even catch fish as well. There are some jellies that are like as big as a person, so they might be catching some bigger food, like a fish as well. So yeah, it depends on the jelly. Let's see. Somebody's asking how big or long they can get. So yeah, there's some that are as big as a person. So I think at least 5 feet long. I'm gonna check. Miss Sarah, is it like 100 feet for like? So some of their is it the whole thing or just the tentacles? From the belt to the tip. Okay, so we were checking in the ones that are like as big as people from the top of their head, the top of their bell here, all the way down to the end of their tentacles. Those can be 100 feet long. So yeah, not every jelly is that big, but some jellies can definitely get pretty big. Great questions about our jellies. All right, so we learned a little bit about our jelly friends. I wanted to make sure we had some time to talk about some other invertebrates because they come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Ooh, more jelly questions. Ooh, great questions. Do jellies have a mouth and do jellies see? Those are fantastic questions. So they kind of have a mouth, but it's not like you're not looking for something with teeth. They kind of have a hole. So sometimes they're like a little hole right in the middle, or there's a couple around like where the openings of the stomachs are for the like the moon jellies. They have a little hole there, and that's what they're shoving their food into. So they're not really having a mouth with teeth, but they have a little opening, and that's where their food go in. And do they have eyes? That's another great question because I don't see eyeballs on my jelly. But they do have little dots around the edge of their bell here, and those are little sensors that can kind of sense the difference between light and shadow, so they can kind of see silhouettes around them. So if you close your eyes, you can tell the difference between I'm just closing my eyes and now I've put my hand in front of my eyes. It's a little bit darker, a little bit lighter, a little bit darker. So that's a little bit about how jellies see around the world. Ooh, what jellies are dangerous? They all can sting, but the strength of the sting varies. I think the box jelly is one of the ones that has one of the more powerful stings. And what species are local? We have moon jellies here a lot of times. Maybe some, I'm trying to think if we have nettles, purple striped jellies. We have a couple jellies that are local here too, at least here, local being here in Southern California, in Long Beach. Great questions, my friends. All right, I'm going to move on to another invertebrate, but again, please feel free to keep asking questions. You guys have excellent jelly questions. I'm going to move on to one with a little bit more arms, and this is one of our friends who lives in a tide pool. Ooh, Miss Morgan read my mind. Good job. So, or read my notes. So a sea star is another friend who has no bones. Now, if you've ever touched a sea star before, you might be like, well, it feels hard. It's not feeling as squishy as I might expect an animal with no bones to be. And that is one of their adaptations, is they do have some pretty tough skin to help them out in their home. Now, they like to live in tide pools where there's lots of waves crashing over them. So it's good to be either to be flexible like an anemone or to be tough like a sea star. So they have some tough skin to help them out. They also, you might notice in this picture, since we're kind of looking at the bottom of a sea star, they also have all these little things here and there. These are called tube feet. And that helps them do a lot of things. That actually helps them move around. It helps them stick onto a rock. It helps them breathe. It also, I think they can also sense, or like, I don't think it's taste, but I think they can kind of smell with their 2 feet too. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, I have a feeling they have something to do with food with their 2 feet too. But anywho's, let's take a look at what they're doing with those tube feet. So that helps them stick on. They all have these little kind of almost like little gluey dots at the end there, and that helps them stick on to the rocks, helps them grab onto some snacks. You can see that these ones at the end there, they're definitely like looking around for something, and hoping for some snacks. It looks like they're definitely exploring around a little bit. But it also helps them grab onto their food. So one of the ways that sea stars eat is by using their 2 feet to grab on. And then if you're wondering what this kind of lumpy bit is in the middle, because we didn't see that earlier in our picture, that is their stomach. So how a sea star eats is it likes to eat. One of the things it loves to eat are things in shells like clams and mussels. And just like us, they don't want to eat the shell. They want to get to all the yummy meat that's inside the shell. So they'll kind of give it a hug with their 2 feet, and they'll pry it open just a little bit. There's a little opening, and then they actually take their stomach out of their body. It's kind of gross, but it's kind of awesome. They take their stomach out, they stuff it in the mussel, they turn it into soup, and then they swallow their stomach back into their body. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine if we ate like a sea star? If you came home to dinner and your mom's like, dinner's ready, here you go, and you're like, thanks mom, it looks delicious, and you took your stomach out and you plopped them on the dinner plate and then swallowed your tummy back. Oh my goodness, that would not be good table manners, at least at my dinner table. So I am glad that we don't eat like a sea star. But yeah, it's a really cool way that helps them get their food. Ooh, fantastic question from one of our friends watching. How many 2 feet do sea stars have? They have a lot. I have not counted them all on a sea star, but I imagine, I don't know. Miss Sarah, do you have like a guesstimate? Like what, like 100? That's true, because they're Miss Sarah reminded me that it depends on the type of sea star too, because sometimes bat stars, they have little stubby arms, but things like sunflower stars have lots and 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 lots of arms. So like that. So they have, depending on the star, they can have a lot of sea stars. I'm not gonna squint and count all these 2 feet, but yeah, they can have a whole bunch. I'm gonna guess and say probably at least, I would say at least 100 on this one alone. Probably more, way more than that, because I can't remember how many are on each arm. But yeah, they can have a lot of 2 feet. That's a great question. Oh my goodness. So they have 2 feet. They have their tummy to help them eat. They have their hard skin. Ooh, and you know what? Since we were talking about eyes earlier, on the jellies, a lot of times people are like, well, the sea star, when I look at a sea star, I don't really see a face there either. Where are their eyes? So just like our jellies kind of have really simple eyes, our sea stars kind of have really simple eyes too. And they have one on each end of their arm. They have a little spot, a little dot right. I'm going to go for the easier one right there. And that helps them kind of, again, see very simply what's around them, just seeing sort of light and shadow, not quite seeing like we see with our eyeballs. Oh my goodness. Very, very cool, sea star friends. Another cool thing that they have to help them out is they have the ability to regenerate limbs. So if something happened to their arm, if something was trying to eat it as a snack, they lost the arm, they could actually grow their arm back. Now, it's not instantaneous. Now, it's not like, ha, I have a new arm. It does take, I think, a good long couple of months or so to kind of regrow that arm back. But yeah, that's another way that they can help themselves out in their home. Some species of sea stars, not all, but some, can even grow a whole nother sea star from that arm they lost. If they have a little bit of the center, they can grow into a whole nother sea star. So all of a sudden now you have 2 sea stars instead of just the one before. Ooh, okay. So we have some more questions coming in. Somebody was asking, can they suction to things like an octopus can? Yeah, they can definitely. I don't know if it's quite as strong as an octopus suction cup, but they can definitely suction onto things like an octopus can. The mechanics a little bit different. It's more like it's more like being a little more gluey than it is being like suction and having pressure. But yeah, it's very similar to an octopus suction cup. And ooh, do they lay eggs? They don't lay an egg like a chicken lays an egg, but they do come from eggs. So very similar to the jellies, kind of everything goes into the water, makes a little egg, and then the egg floats around. Eventually it will settle and start turning into something that looks a little bit more like a sea star. So yeah, they do come from eggs, but it's not like you don't have like mama sea star kind of sitting on an egg like a chicken. It's everything's in the water and kind of floats around. Great questions, my friends. Okay, speaking of octopuses, that's actually the last invertebrate I wanted to talk about. So you guys read my mind. And we can chat about octopuses for a little bit because we have just about 5 minutes or so left in hanging out this morning. Ta-da! So that's what an octopus looks like. Now, ooh, and this is them on the move. You can see those suction cups in action sticking to the glass there. So the suction cups help them move. They help them grab onto things. I believe they also taste with their suction cups too. Can you imagine if like we tasted things with our fingers, if we're just like, it's the morning, I don't know what I want for breakfast, and you're just like blindly reaching around the cabinet, you're like, there's some cereal over here, and oh, here's the coffee, and here's some pancake mix over here. So yeah, they can actually kind of sense around themselves with those suction cups as well. Now they do have 8 arms, and that kind of makes sense if you think about the word octopus. Octo, thinking about octagon, has 8 sides like a stop sign. So they have 8 arms to help them out. They also have this is a fun little picture to see a little bit more of their 8 arms. They also have a beak in the middle to help them crack open things with hard shells. So they are very soft and squishy. Actually, they're a little bit more muscly than you think. They're not like super duper squishy, but they're definitely a lot squishier than, say, our sea star friends. But they have a beak in the middle to help them crack open things in hard shells. That is the only hard part on them. So they can actually, and they are really good at camouflage. So watch this. There's red, and then abracadabra. Oh my goodness, they are really, 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 really good at hiding. So yeah, I definitely want to talk about their camouflage as well. And then back to red again. I love this video. It's so awesome. So, they can change their color, as we can see in this video here. They have little sacks of ink in there. This is our octopus here at the aquarium, blowing bubbles at you, silly goose. But also look at how perfectly they're matching the texture of the rock they're next to. So they have little sacks of ink in their skin called chromatophores that helps them change their color. They can control the size and shape of those sacks of ink, which controls kind of what color you're seeing or how much of a color you're seeing. But you also notice, especially in this one, they're getting kind of pointy here. They were smooth, but they're getting kind of little points, little spikes as well. So they can also change the texture of their skin as well. So I think that's why they're one of the masters of camouflages. They can not only change the color, but if you were your color matched, but if you were on a really bumpy thing and you were very smooth, you might still stand out a little bit. So they have little sacks um, of sacks of ink to help them change their colors, and then they have little points, or excuse me, little muscles to help kind of draw their skin into little spikes and points as well. Ooh, we had a question coming in about octopus brains, and do they really have 8 brains? So they actually have 9. Now they don't have 9 really big brains. They have kind of one big brain up in here. This is kind of where all their guts are here. So they are head-footed animals. If we kind of flipped our head and our torso around, that's kind of their body plan. So they have one big brain up here, but then on the ends of their, or excuse me, not the ends, but the beginnings of their arms, they have like little mini brains. And so that way, their one big brain is kind of taking care of like all the important stuff and keeping their body moving and grooving. But they have little mini brains on their arms. They're kind of like little neural. They're a little bit simpler, but that allows their arms to act independently. But so it's basically like they can multitask. Right? I'm over here, eating a snack, but over here, I'm going to be looking around. I'm going to be tidying up my cave. So the arms can sort of act independently of each other. It's not so much that like they're gonna one side's gonna want to go this way and one side's gonna go this way, and your octopus is gonna be like, "Wow, what are you doing?" So they still kind of coordinate, but yeah, they have one big brain and then 8 little brains around on their arms. Another great question is, do they sleep? And I think they rest, but I don't think they sleep like we sleep. I don't think they go curl up in a little sea bed and pull the covers over their head and like conk out for 8 hours. But I think they definitely do kind of take naps, and they have periods of time when they're resting versus exploring or eating. Great questions, my friends. Thank you so much for all your questions. Got another. Ooh, and if you look really close in the middle, that's where their beak is, right in the middle of their mouth. And again, that's their only hard part. So they can squish themselves down into any space that is bigger than their beak. So you can have a really big octopus that's like, these friends, these giant Pacific octopuses, excuse me, they can get like over 20 feet long, and their mouth is like a couple of inches. So you can have a huge octopus that can fit into a teeny tiny little space. So sometimes I'll be looking for an octopus and I'll be like, okay, you're not there. You're not in like your usual spots. You're not in your cave. And all of a sudden I'll look up and they are smushed into a really tiny space, like in between the rocks and the rest of the exhibit. I'm like, you found a new hiding spot up there. So yeah, octopuses are super duper cool invertebrates that hang out in our home. Oh my goodness, my friends. We learned so much today about animals with no bones. So even though they had no bones, it was no problem for them. They still had some really cool adaptations to help them out in their home. So we learned, what is an invertebrate? It's that friend with no backbone. We learned about our jellies and their stinging cells, and our moon jellies that have 4 tummies. We learned about our sea stars, which have 2 feet and a really cool way to eat by taking their stomach out. They have their hard skin. They have their eyes on the ends of their arms, and our jellies have the eyes on their belt. And then we learned about my favorite, the octopus, their 8 arms, their suction cups, how they are so good at camouflaging, and their beak and their suction cups. So we learned a whole bunch about our octopus friends today. So I want to thank you guys very much for hanging out with me this morning. I do ask that if there are any classes watching, teachers, if you wouldn't mind texting in the number of students that are watching with you, that just helps us get a little bit of a better gauge about our viewership and how many folks are watching these programs. You're welcome to text those class numbers in. We'll get that number back up on our screen in just a moment here. There we go. And that is 562-286-1838. I'm going to get good at my backwards pointing here. Ooh, that one was inking. That's another cool thing that octopuses do. So again, teachers, if you wouldn't mind texting in those class numbers, that again, just how many students are watching with you, that helps us gauge a little bit better how many folks are viewing this program and helps us better serve our communities here. But again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. If you have any further questions, you are welcome to email us now. That email address is live@lbaop.org. So again, thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you next time. We do have another program coming up at 10 o'clock in about half an hour. It'll be one of our bilingual programs. So again, thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.